everyone, and welcome to this panel discussion. It's titled Readying for a Sustained Comeback in the Pharma and MedTech Sectors. What should be the key priorities? I'm Neil Cayenne, Senior Vice President of the Commercialization Division of Accelerate. I head up the Biomedical Sciences arm, and I'm very pleased to be moderating this panel. I'm joined today by Marco Steinkamp, Sales Director, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Mobilitas Consulting, GmbH. And also Hajime Sugiyama, Industrial IoT Evangelist at Mitsubishi in Japan. Thanks for being here with us. I would probably want to hear a little bit more from both of you before we start the panel discussion per se. So before we start, can I invite that each of you briefly share some of the background, both of yourself and of your companies, and maybe a little bit about what has been going on in your organization during this COVID-19, right? Over to you, Haji.
Yeah. Hi. Hello from Tokyo. My name is Hajime Sugiyama from Mitsubishi Electric. I'm what you call an industry IoT evangelist. So it's my job to talk about interesting technologies, and I'm happy to be here with you, Cayenne, and also you, Marco. So I work in the factory automation business unit. So it's Mitsubishi Electric produces things like robots, PLCs, and software that are used for the automation of pharma and medtech equipment. And I'm also responsible for doing the digital transformation with our customers and probably our internally as well. So maybe I talk a little about what happened with COVID.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Okay, so it's been a disaster, or it's been a very, very interesting experience, these 8 months with COVID. I could probably write a book about what happened, but I think it first started when the issue came up that everybody needed face masks. So there was a huge demand for face masks all over the world, and meaning there was a need to make the PPE and make the machinery to produce these face masks. And that's where we had to provide our PLCs and our servo motors to these face mask companies. But the issue was the supply chain. So as you know, all the borders were shut down and we couldn't get equipment. We couldn't get things from China, and then Southeast Asia went into shutdown, so we couldn't get the electrical components from the Southeast countries. So we really had to run around getting those supply chains open and being able to supply our products to the face mask manufacturers. So it's a real mess. And at the end, we also had to help the face mask manufacturers make their machines running. So we ended up making a lot of function blocks, like easy sample programs, so they could make it do easier. And then just the end of my face mask story happened that, we have about 150,000 employees at Mitsubishi Electric. So we didn't want the issue that we take the face masks and face shields from the market, because the hospitals would need them. So what we did was we ended up making our own face shields. So we're not a PPE supplier. But what we did was we used the latest technology like 3D printing, lean engineering. We did everything remote, and we were able to put a face shield, I think you can see over here, onto the production line in 25 days. So I think that was a very, very interesting work from our engineers, and shows what technology can make true. And that's just some things that I did during these 8 months. I'd like to share what we did otherwise during the session. And it's nice to talk to you and discuss about technology today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Haji. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's a great example of how a lot of people in the industry have just stepped up and answered the call for needs across the world, right? So thank you for sharing that. Over to you, Marco. Maybe something about yourself and your company, and what have you been up to during COVID?
Yes, thank you. And first of all, appreciate and thanks very much for allowing me being part of this year. Very much looking forward to this conversation, especially talking to an evangelist for IoT, which is pretty much going into the Mobilitas direction. So really keen. My name is Marco Steinkamp. I'm the responsible director at Mobilitas for Europe, Middle East, and Asia. Basically with Mobilitas since a little more than 5 years now. And yeah, what Mobilitas is doing effectively is we are a consulting company, IT consulting company, and help our customers in the areas of manufacturing, of warehousing, and specifically, of course, as well in tracking and tracing. So any track and trace projects we are doing is very much focused on the pharmaceutical industry very often, but also others as well. In terms of COVID, yeah, I believe and I agree with what Hajime has said. There's a lot of stories we all have in our books here. Maybe to link it a little bit to us and Mobilitas, one thing we were very much hit by very hard. COVID means you stop traveling. COVID means you stop meeting face to face and etc. So for us, that was a real case to say, how can we still help customers? How can we still continue projects? How can we still ensure things are achieved as planned? And it was a little bit a challenge for all of us, for us as a consulting company, but also for suppliers, also for customers, for producing companies. And I think we all found out together that the remote approach is much more feasible than we ever thought before. So example is we really did the project completely remote. So from first get to know to each other on screen up to really the point of go live, including assessment workshops, including testing things and so on. So yes, it's possible. It's not ideal, of course. As we all know, I think is preferred and very nice. But if circumstances require, there is a chance to do things remotely and virtually. And that is really cool. That was also, and going a bit into Hajime's part again, IoT, we were using VR glasses, for example, to do a warehouse tour or a manufacturing tour to see technology and discuss with people. So yeah, it works. New circumstances force you to find new ways. That was a definitely good experience.
Yeah, thank you. So both of you have highlighted some two major areas that impacted our lives over COVID: the mask and that online platform where we now conduct our lives across the world. So so let's talk a little bit more about that. So because if you think about, I mean, just maybe setting the stage a little bit, right? I would say that throughout COVID, oh, we lost.
Sorry, my light went out. Just wait a second. Sorry. Okay. This is the trouble with online, so you disappear. So
there is, I think, the pharma and medtech industries typically so far have probably been better off, right, over this period. Maybe to different extents, depending on which industry you are at and where, you know, the capabilities of your organizations are. So it would be impacting somewhat. Maybe even your business model might change. But at the end of the day, I think pharma medtech still, you know, are pretty much better off compared to a lot of other sectors in the industry. So maybe I would like to maybe start by asking you, what were some of the challenges besides your personal challenge as well and what you've already shared, like as a corporation, you know, what were some of the key challenges that you faced during this period and how you have overcome them? Okay, maybe I would again start with Haji from Mitsubishi Electric Corporation, to share a little bit how I don't know if you do a short form, but Mitsubishi Electric Corporation overcome, you know, some of these challenges. I'm sure you do a lot more things beyond production of masks. Please go ahead, Haji.
I think one important thing we found out that, of course, you know, there's a lot of technologies that help you through this crisis. For instance, you know, as Marco talked about VR, we also did these things because we couldn't visit our factories that we had in China, or for instance, or we had in India. We usually, if we had an issue, we would send an engineer over to go and, you know, restart the factory if we had a major issue or we had issues with quality. But we couldn't do that, so we just had to use the technology in order to fix things. And I think, you know, to overcome that, first it was difficult because everybody was used to getting a phone call and getting an engineer over to the factory. But now we have to use, you know, we were starting using mobile phones. putting it on a camera mode, taking it to the machine and show you how to kind of remote maintenance. But, it didn't work out. So we said, okay, let's try using VR glasses so you can see in better definition. Okay, 3G is not good. Maybe if we move to 4G, we can have higher resolution to see the core issues that we have in the factory. So I think those were one of the things that we learned, to use technology. And I think one lesson or challenge we had that, automation is sometimes not good because automation could not, and AI did not predict the COVID will come. So AI is smart, but it never predicted this incident would happen. And at the end, who helped us get through the COVID crisis and repair our supply chain? It was the people. Because we had a lot of people who had already went through this crisis when we had the Fukushima crisis, or also these typhoons where they shut out, a certain country that has a part supplier, we were kind of used to it, getting through these supply chain issues. I mean, there's these trade wars where suddenly a border closes down. So we're used to it. So because of the people that went through those crises, we were able to kind of adjust and adapt to this new COVID issue, which was totally new. So I think keeping the right balance between AI is very important because AI is not going to predict everything. I mean.
Yeah. Thank you for refocusing the foundation of the world, which is people, right? I think we forget sometimes that the world revolves around people too, and also the resilience of people. I think we can see a lot of examples of that as well. But given that this is ITAP and we are here about Industry 4.0 and the factories of the future, I want to dig a little bit into your experience because, I mean, not many were able to turn around and manufacture in 25 days, like you just shared, with the proper PP mask. A lot of companies face challenges to ramp up demands, or even just to adapt, to the different needs that were coming through because of COVID. And actually, in fact, about relocating factories or stuff, even to accommodate some of the trade war challenges, right, that were coming through in the midst of COVID. So maybe to share a little bit how that would have come into help and how would the experience at Mitsubishi Electric Corporation, be something that the rest of the world could learn from, and your learnings, whether, obviously based on the good people experience that you have shared, on top of that, how did some of this expertise within your company come into play?
Maybe it's a very good question. How does technology can come into play to help our companies? I think this new technology helped us to find where we were really inefficient. Because when we went through this, we found a lot of, things that we shouldn't have done, were a waste of time. And because of the short time we had to produce things, we kind of cut out all these unnecessary processes that we thought were necessary, but were not necessary. And in order to shorten the lead time, because we knew that we didn't have 2 months to develop a face shield because our face shield stock was going to go out in maybe 1 month. So we had to get it done in 25 days. And that was the reason that we looked again at our processes, looked at the technology that will be able to enable us to do it in the fastest way. In this case was using 3D printing, for instance, also simulation to simulate our line so we didn't have to kind of, do the checkup, spend a lot of time checkup on the factory floor before doing the machine. So we put all these in places and, it worked. So we found out, it was actually faster and more efficient using these new technologies than doing the old traditional way that we were used to do it. So I think those were great experience for us.
Thank you very much. Yes, and so Marco, over to you now. So how has some of the challenges come to you? You have shared a little bit of that, and I can imagine Mobilitas, right? How do you get to people? How do you get to people in an efficient manner? Yes, that will help. Maybe at the beginning, how do you overcome some of the hitches on conducting business online and without travel?
Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. As I said, it was really a learning curve for all of us to understand that it works remote, not perfectly, and maybe, as I said, face-to-face is preferred. We are all human beings. We like the personal touch. But we had to go through the curve that, yeah, it works remotely. Yes, it works if you just see on the screen. But what we also found, maybe a little bit going away from this remote aspect, but in terms of technology, how it helps, and what COVID revealed, where maybe weak points are, what we found from our customers is that classically, supply chain, let's say distribution, warehousing, etc., is classically a field where not too much investment is done because, yeah, it works, it has been stable for years, and don't touch the running system. COVID basically led to the fact that people had to stay away, had to stay home, were not able to go to work, and to suddenly realize how important the human factor is. Going a little bit into Hashimi's direction, yes, the technology is great, but it cannot do everything. It cannot predict everything, and it cannot do every single hand touch we are doing. So I think what we see is that COVID is a bit of leverage to think again about your supply chain, think about where can I invest in technology to automate things. Classic example is forklift trucks or sorting machines, bundling machines to bundle, let's say, orders from customers automatically from Hyrex and all that. So it's a driver. To the positive side of things, if you want to say like this, it forces us to rethink things that have been working and have been doing in a certain way for years. And now we have a new view on it and see, okay, can we improve it? Can we change it? Is there a chance to get us support from the one or the other technology solution?
Kayan, I got another thing I forgot to say. I think one thing we really found out about technology is the importance to automate processes. I think in the medtech industry, there's still packaging processes where you use people. And for us, cost is always important as if you're a manufacturer. You need to reduce cost, and it's sometimes cheaper to do it with humans. That's why we still have a lot of humans doing this work. But this didn't work in the COVID situation because we had to separate our shifts, we had to balance our shifts in two. So even if one shift, got the virus, then the other shift would still be able to work. So, but that means, less people on the production line at one time. And in order to do that, you need a certain amount of automation. So we thought, okay, cost is important, but if you look at, the things that might happen in the future, even if it's going to cost us a little more money to automate the packaging process, it will make sense because it will save us in these kind of situations. So, I think a lot of people kind of hesitate on doing automation because of the cost, but in these terms, it's better to have automation. It will save you in the long time. So I think that's one really key point that we learned through this crisis, that even if it costs a little more, it's going to save you. And we were actually more efficient, with this new automation in packaging. So,
okay. If I may add to that straight away, another aspect or effect, if you automate things, and automation means you introduce not only, let's say, engineering type of technology, but also software, IT components. Yeah, you are handling data, sending data to production lines, collecting data from there, collecting data from your supply chain, etc. So that also generates another level of transparency and visibility of what happens. Yeah? Mm. So the more you do manually and, let's say, distracted from each other, the less overview you have, the more you have technology and automation and kind of holistic and picture, the more insights you have, and the more, let's say, basis you have to take decisions to change things in the one way or the other, to look into new products, etc., etc. So there's a lot of things that open as soon as you have a good set of information as a basis to take a decision upon.
Exactly, yes.
So actually, Marco, I think the whole world now being very familiar with contact tracing will help your value proposition, your track and trace value proposition, yeah. Right? Because everybody now understands the value of being able to follow through a certain process and, and the touch points along a certain process. So, but I think that's a very valuable point here. Automation, and even more beyond automation, to be able to collect data and manage data along the way, and implementing it on site sometimes because physically you cannot be there. So, and I'm hearing this thing from both of you. In a way, we probably come from, when the world was just chugging along at full speed, breakneck speed, everything was just go, go, go. We talk about technology enabling humankind, right? But now there's also a little bit of that return to how humankind is also enabling technology. We are coming to the point where almost some of the technologies are really rearing its head a lot further than, for instance, digital health. For a long time, the proponents of digital health, and along a few sectors in MedTech, we're all talking about digital health, and how it should come in and relieve, the resources, the healthcare resources across the world. It was an uphill task because there are so many hurdles along the way that we need to overcome, and technology was just one of them, right? But with COVID, I think that's just all been thrown aside, and on digital health, it has been pushed to the forefront and become almost a necessity. To some extent, I think that's one way where COVID actually helps surface needs and efficiencies and opportunities for technologies to really come into play. So with thinking of that, maybe can you share, maybe from your experience, what may be some very interesting technologies coming from both your areas, that, could be very relevant to the new norm, and you think that that's going to come in and really impact things as economies open up, and and people are going to try and attempt to live life as normally. How might some technologies that you see, well, be it in your company, but if it's outside, of your company in other areas, I would like to hear from you. Have you seen something like that coming through? Who would like to start?
Maybe you can start, Marco. Yeah, sure. For change.
Concrete example, so to say, again, coming from the track and trace environment. Track and trace so far, mainly driven in the pharma industry, is driven by, mainly done in the pharma industry, is driven by regulation, so by government requirements. So they force you to say, this is my product, I follow it through the chain up to the point of consumption or point of sale. Okay, the industry is doing it because of that, there is a legal force behind it. But that is now since many years going on, and I see a shift here from the point that there's a force, there's a legal requirement, we need to be compliant, up to we see the business advantage, the competitive advantage, because over years now, and I'm sure Hashimi will agree to me, technology has become cheaper in relation to, let's say, previous years, in relation to scope and scale and skills and all that capabilities. So now we are at a point in time where every one of us has this little mobile thing in the pocket, which is basically, full computer with everything. And today we are in a position, also due to network infrastructure, LTE, 4G, etc., that anywhere, if you are at your home, in the street, on the field, you can pick a product and say, hold on, I would like to check, is this real? Is that authentic? Is that maybe a fake product? Or I want additional information. And this is, of course, driving then companies' interest, now to close a bit to your question, because it's the first time in human history that from the point of production up to the consumer, to you and me, there's a very easy way to have a direct channel to the individual item, to the individual consumer. And that opens up a whole new universe of things you can do with that kind of information, both ways.
Yeah, I think COVID has certainly heightened the awareness of traceability and the value of that, plus the authenticity, the ability to authenticate has become super important. Yeah. Hajime?
Okay, one thing I think cobots, so collaborative robots, will pick up, people working together with robots. We see a huge demand coming up right now. One reason is because in the past, cobots are a little slow because they have to be safe when you work with humans. So they're very, very safe to use, but they're slow. And in the past, a lot of Japanese, which like fast production, said, okay, these are too slow to put in an actual production line. But in the present, because of COVID, they immediately need to install a robot in order to cope with the reduce of people, because it's also difficult to get people overseas because of the banning of travel. So we need to put a robot in there, but we don't have the time to make it safe, put a gate around it, and it has to just go in and work. In the past, we would have to use SafeGate. We had to establish rules, how to work with the robot, when to, if you could touch the robot or slow down, and all these rules would have to come in place, but we didn't have the time. And in that case, these kind of cobots are very, very helpful, because all you have to do is just install the robot, and it will ensure that even a human is working next to it. He will, it will slow down when it gets near, and it will stop if it touches the robot. So it's extremely safe for our workers, and we can manage these processes with less people. So I think we see a huge demand in cobots. And the other thing is 5G. I mean, we're doing a lot of remote maintenance work overseas and with our clients, helping them out. But sometimes 4G is not fast enough, because in manufacturing, you really have to see the detail. You have to see the quality of the part. If something breaks down, what is the root cause of that problem? And in order to deliver, fast images in real time, 4G doesn't quite do the perfect job. And that's why we're doing some testing. If we can see these kind of 5G images in real time, moving in high resolution, so we can troubleshoot these things over the web. And I think it's going to accelerate the usage of 5G in factories as well. So. Yeah,
I'm sure we're going to hear 5G throughout this conference, and with a very high frequency. But I think thanks for sharing that. Actually, hearing from both of you, it reminds me that you're all very familiar with in a large company setting, where there are certainly capabilities and resources to adopt technology and adapt. Maybe I want to spend a few minutes tapping your brains on where do you see that for smaller companies, small and medium enterprises? Clearly, a lot of them are suffering today. Maybe some pharma type, biotech type companies less so, and some medtech type less so, because they were able to pivot their business quickly to respond to it. But definitely, I mean, it is taking a strain on many such companies. What would be your advice in the area of tech adoption for them? Because just again, humans enabling tech, and then tech enabling humans as well. How do you, what would be your advice for companies trying to see if they can, scale up their efficiency or move on to the next phase where their business is a little bit more resilient to pandemics such as these in the future?
Yeah, if you want.
Marco, go ahead.
I think to be honest, I feel it's the same for small as well as big companies. And we see that from a consulting perspective. The first thing you need to be really clear on, and I'm sorry for maybe praying the old story, but you really need to understand first and be clear, what do you want to achieve? It doesn't help to throw technology and throw a bunch of money on something. What is your expectation? What should be the result like? Is it an operative result? Is it a tactical thing you want to achieve? Or is it a strategic investment you want to make because you're looking 8-10 years ahead? Once you have that, and then you know, okay, where we want to be, where we are today, then you can define the course of actions that you need to follow. And this is the same principle, whether you're a multi-billion-dollar company or a small family-owned type of business. Understand where you want to be and what your direction is. Only then technology helps. Classic example, of course, is always taking cars. So it doesn't help you to put the best, whatever, Mercedes, Ferrari, BMW into your garage. If your way to work is just 100 meters to walk, it doesn't help. Maybe you need just a proper rain umbrella to ensure you're not getting wet on your way. So a bit simplifying, of course, but think first what you want and need, and then you can define the way forward.
So if I may dig deeper and challenge that a little bit, to ask, so for SMEs, we call them, typically they are more hung up, or rather more focused around bread and butter issues. And especially in a crisis situation, all the more so it becomes more challenging to just run the day-to-day in a way that the company could survive, right? And even and of course we have companies that are also more established but still small. But what differentiates typically is the access to resources and time. The time frame tends to be shorter. So what would you suggest and recommend in such situations?
Very openly speaking, we've seen this with a lot of SMEs, small, medium companies. Don't try to solve everything on your own. You can also speak with your partners, with the network. I mean, there are people in your supply chain around you. Depending on the topic, also speak with your competitors because they have the same problem. And maybe there's a kind of joint approach that can be taken that helps both sides. Be open-minded. Don't try to save the world just with your own hands. Maybe there are other hands that can be of help.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, a collaborative approach to solving some of the technology hurdles. It could actually be something that people work together and ultimately the industry would benefit from, right? So thank you. I think that's a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think, Marco, you stole what I was going to say. First focus on the goal, and then, later think about the technology. It's exactly what I tell my staff and my customers, first decide if you want to improve quality, if you want to reduce lead time, and then technology is only a how. But I think one important point is that you have to use, don't believe what everybody tells you. I mean, IoT Industry 4.0 is not easy. And of course, you'll hear all these beautiful stories of how they used IoT to, improve their production line. But we make a lot of mistakes. I've been doing this for about 17 years in what we call eFactory, which is our IoT factory. But about half of our kind of projects end up in failure. So we've made a lot of mistakes, but it's only through those mistakes that we learned what works and what doesn't work. So if you don't try, you will never be able to have a feeling about what technology works and what technology doesn't work. And I also agree with Marco. It's very important to have people who have already made their mistakes help you, because you don't want to make the same mistakes that they have been making. So I mean, one of the mistakes we made about data analytics and AI is the people on the factory side have no deep knowledge of AI and data analytics. They're not data scientists. So we implemented some technology, but it was way too difficult for them to use, so they didn't use it. It was just a waste of time. So what we've decided is we're only going to implement technology that is easy to use for the people on the factory floor who are doing the packaging or maintaining the equipment. It has to be easy. And, those things I think are very important, but we wouldn't have learned that if we didn't try. And so I think the first thing for all these small, middle sizes, even if it's a small start, you have to try, or you're not going to be able to use these kind of emerging technology. You have to have some internal knowledge to make the decision making of what technology will be beneficial for you and not. Because if you just believe whatever everybody tells you, you're going to make a lot of mistakes and probably waste a lot of money as well. So I think that's my advice to the small, middle size. Even if it's small, you have to try.
Fully agree with that. Couldn't agree more. And also, when you do this, let's say transition, or you try to implement new technologies, ways of working, all of that, keep in mind changes always taking place in small steps, kind of baby steps, so to say. So just because you started now, next week, the world will not have changed. But if you then take a while, continue, be consistent, and then look back in half a year or after 1 year, maybe even, then you will really realize what has changed. So allow change to take some time. Don't expect because you have a quarterly budget review, in 3 months, everything must have changed. No, that will not work. It will take time, especially, and then closing the loop again back to you, if you talk about human behavior, processes, ways of working, it takes time until it changes, and it takes time until you see the benefits and the results. So allow you and your people a little bit of time to achieve what you want to achieve.
I have this interesting story about the face shield thing. So we were making the face shield, and of course our digital supply chain is digitalized at some point, so we could see the stock of what suppliers had. At the end, we got into the kind of panic mode because we couldn't find any plastic in the market, the shields we wanted to make of the kind of material we did. So everybody shows zero, and they said it didn't stock. So what we did was found a phone call always works, because not everybody puts all their stock onto this digital information. But I think, we've never have learned that unless we've, went through this journey. So I think, we learned it's not perfect, but, it's also, as I said, again, digital is good, but also the human touch always makes a difference.
Oh, incredible. So you can't find it online, but you make a phone call and then you got your stocks. Okay, that's incredible. So again, very, very, it's amazing sharing from the both of you. We're going back again to, how humans are going to empower technology moving forward. So I have a few minutes here left, and maybe I want to do a little bit of a plug for the ecosystem in Singapore. And I want to emphasize to the audience out there that there are a lot of programs in place that within A-Star, within Enterprise Singapore, you could look for help if you're an SME looking to adopt technology. Okay, so I wouldn't spend too much time talking about the details, but look up the websites, and then you might find various resources that can help you adopt technology. But listen to the great advice here. Where do you start? Even baby steps would be useful. Know where you want to arrive at, and then start making those phone calls and having those conversations. So, okay. We are almost to the tail end of our session here. I want to maybe give a few minutes to both of you to leave some last words with the audience, from your experience and from your areas, what may be some good nuggets of advice, up for a post-COVID new normal future for all of us in the audience. Maybe Haji first.
I don't know how much management is going to be in this audience, or if there's a lot of middle-level engineers, but right now is a very good chance to try new technologies, because I think the management level sees the necessity of these kind of digital IoT technologies into their factory, and now they understand it more because they've been using the Teams meeting. They see all this data going around, so they have they're more convinced to use this technology. But it always starts with trying. So I'd always say, okay, if you don't try and if you don't start, you'll never learn. So I want everybody to please, just have a little bravery, take your first steps, and I'm sure you're going to learn and you'll be successful on your journey. And as Mitsubishi Electric, we've gone through a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. So I think there's a lot of things we can help you with from our experiences on how to implement industry IoT and IoT, Industry 4.0 on your manufacturing lines in the pharma and medtech industries. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Haji. And Marco.
Yeah, again, very happy to agree to Hashimi's words. Totally fine with that. Sometimes it's difficult to, let's say, to possible, or what kind of, let's say, technologies are there, what is already connected, is there a kind of best practice or an example how it could work? So I'm very well heard that you said something about Singapore, so that rang well with me. So anyone really feel invited? Mobilitas Consulting is since day one SAP partner. So we are also implementing a lot of SAP solutions. And what we have done in the last 1.5 years is there's a co-innovation center in Singapore from SAP, where you see a lot of technologies, and I think I have seen Mitsubishi's name there as well somewhere, I think. So there's something around track and trace, there's something around manufacturing, digitalization 4.0, IoT, very interesting, how this IoT can help you in terms of predictive maintenance, for example. So from reactive to predictive, anticipating things happening, and then we are back to AI as well again. So there are a lot of good things shown in that co-innovation center. And yeah, if anyone is interested, feel free to reach out. Very happy to talk you through and maybe to close off my part. So I've been now a couple of times in Singapore. I have to say, lovely city. I enjoy very much. And please, anyone call me and give me good reason to travel back once again. I would like to go there.
We'll definitely bear that in mind. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. And yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we have Marco Steinkamp from Mobilitas. Thank you, Marco. And Hajime Sujiyama from Mitsubishi Electric Corporation. Thank you, Haji. So thank you all of you out there. Have a good afternoon.